"Get away from her, you beast!" Fernando's voice cut through the Miami night like a blade as he rushed toward the desperate screams echoing from the narrow alley behind his penthouse building. The powerful tattoos covering his muscled arms seemed to dance in the dim streetlight as he sprinted, his $3,000 suit jacket flying behind him. After 12 hours of handling the family's business negotiations, the kind that left weaker men trembling, Fernando Castellano had been looking forward to a quiet evening. But those terrified cries had shattered any hope of peace. "Help me! Please! Someone help!" The woman's voice was pure terror. As he rounded the corner into the alley, Fernando's sharp brown eyes immediately assessed the situation. A blonde woman with striking blue eyes was pressed against the brick wall, her designer dress torn at the shoulder. 3 feet away, a massive German shepherd bared its teeth, growling low and menacing, blocking any escape route. "Stay back!" Fernando commanded, positioning himself between the woman and the snarling dog. At 35, he'd faced down armed rivals and corrupt politicians, but something about this scene felt different, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with business. The dog's eyes weren't filled with aggression, they were protective, desperate. Before we continue with Fernando's story, I want to take a moment to connect with all of you watching tonight. If you're enjoying this tale of unexpected romance and danger, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps us bring you more stories like this one. And I'm curious, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop a comment below and let me know your city or country. Are you Team Fernando already? Or do you think our mysterious Amanda is hiding secrets of her own? Give this video a thumbs up if you're ready for a wild ride through Miami's most dangerous love story. Now back to our tale. Fernando's keen instincts, honed by years of reading people's intentions, kicked in immediately. Something wasn't right about this picture. The woman, Amanda, he heard her whisper to herself in relief when she saw him, wasn't just any random victim. Her dress, though torn, was expensive, her jewelry was real, and the way she held herself, even in fear, spoke of education and refinement. But it was the dog that truly puzzled him. As Fernando studied the German shepherd more carefully, he noticed something that made his heart skip. Behind the protective mother, barely visible in the shadows, were 3 tiny puppies, no more than a few weeks old. "She's not attacking you," Fernando said slowly, his voice gentling as understanding dawned. "She's protecting her babies." Amanda's blue eyes widened, tears streaming down her perfect cheekbones. I was trying to help them. They looked so hungry, so cold. I brought food, but when I got close, she thought you were a threat," Fernando finished, his respect for both females growing. The mother dog's fierce protectiveness reminded him of something he'd lost long ago, the ability to care about something beyond power and money. As sirens wailed in the distance, someone had called the police. Fernando made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "What's your name, beautiful?" "Amanda Richardson," she whispered, still pressed against the wall. Fernando Castellano had just found something worth protecting again. "Mr. Castellano, the police are asking questions about the incident." Miguel, Fernando's most trusted lieutenant, spoke quietly into his phone 3 days later. "Should I handle this the usual way?" Fernando stood on his penthouse balcony, watching the Miami sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Since the alley encounter, he hadn't been able to focus on business. All he could think about was Amanda Richardson, and those crystal blue eyes filled with compassion for helpless animals. "No," he said firmly, "this one's different. I'll handle it personally." After disconnecting, Fernando pulled up the background report his security team had compiled on Amanda. 28 years old, veterinary student at University of Miami, worked part-time at an animal rescue shelter. Parents died in a car accident when she was 22, leaving her with just enough insurance money to finish school. Currently living in a modest apartment in Coral Gables, struggling to make ends meet while pursuing her dream of helping animals. Everything about her screamed innocence, the exact opposite of the dangerous world Fernando ruled with an iron fist. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Castellano, this is Amanda. I wanted to thank you properly for helping me the other night. The mother dog and her puppies are safe now. I managed to get them to a rescue facility. Would you like to meet for coffee? I owe you at least that much." Fernando stared at the message, his tattooed fingers tracing the phone's edge. In his world, women approached him for 2 reasons, money or protection. But something in Amanda's simple words felt genuine, pure, dangerous. He typed back quickly, "Versailles restaurant, tomorrow at 2 p.m., my treat." As he hit send, Fernando's reflection caught his eye in the glass door. The man staring back was nothing like the idealistic young Fernando who'd joined the family business 15 years ago. Scars crisscrossed his knuckles from countless fights. His dark hair was perfectly styled to hide a bullet graze from last year's territorial dispute with the Russians, and those tattoos covering his arms told stories of loyalty, power and violence that would terrify most people. What could someone like Amanda Richardson possibly want with a man like him? The next afternoon, Fernando arrived at Versailles 30 minutes early, choosing a corner table where he could watch all entrances. Old habits. When Amanda walked through the door at exactly 2 p.m., every conversation in the restaurant seemed to pause. She wore a simple sundress the color of Miami sky, her blonde hair catching the light like spun gold. But it was her genuine smile when she spotted him that hit Fernando like a physical blow to the chest. "You came," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "You doubted I would?" Fernando's voice carried just a hint of amusement. Amanda blushed, stirring cream into her Cuban coffee. "Honestly, a little. Men like you usually don't—" "Men like me?" Fernando leaned forward, intrigued. "Powerful, important. You have that look, like you're used to people jumping when you speak." Her blue eyes met his directly, unflinching. "But you stopped to help a stranger and her dog babies. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are underneath all that intimidation." Fernando had been called many things in his life: ruthless, dangerous, untouchable. But never had anyone looked past his reputation to see something good underneath. The sensation was as unsettling as it was addictive. "Tell me about the dogs," he said, changing the subject before she could see too much. Amanda's entire face lit up. "Bella, that's what I named the mother. She's incredible, protective but gentle with her babies. The rescue found her owners, but they didn't want the puppies. So now I'm fostering them until they're old enough for adoption." She paused, her expression growing sad. "Though I wish I could keep them all, but my apartment barely fits me, and vet school doesn't leave much budget for 3 growing German shepherds." An idea began forming in Fernando's mind. A dangerous, wonderful idea that went against every rule he'd ever learned about keeping his 2 worlds separate. "What if money wasn't an issue?" he asked carefully. Amanda laughed, the sound like music. "Then I'd buy a big house with a huge yard, open my own animal rescue, and spend my days saving every abandoned pet in Miami." Fernando Castellano had just found his new mission, and this time it had nothing to do with territory or profit. It had everything to do with making an angel's dreams come true. "Ditto, boss. With all due respect, this is insane." Miguel paced Fernando's office like a caged tiger, his voice tight with concern. "You're talking about buying property, funding a business for some woman you met 3 days ago?" Fernando didn't look up from the real estate listings spread across his mahogany desk. Each property was worth over $2 million, with enough acreage for the kind of animal rescue Amanda had described. "It's an investment, Miguel. Diversification. Diversification into puppy dogs." Miguel's voice cracked slightly. "Fernando, the Kozlov family is still pushing into our territory. The feds are sniffing around our shipping operations. And you want to play fairy godfather to some veterinary student? Careful." Fernando's voice dropped to the dangerous tone that made grown men reconsider their life choices. "You're talking about someone important to me." The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. In 15 years of working together, Miguel had never heard his boss claim anyone was important beyond family blood ties. Fernando's phone buzzed with another text from Amanda. "Fernando, thank you for coffee yesterday. I keep thinking about our conversation. You seem lonely underneath all that confidence. If you ever want to see the puppies, they're doing great. No pressure. I just thought you might like to know you helped save 4 lives that night." Lonely. When was the last time someone had seen past his armor to recognize the emptiness he carried? Fernando closed his eyes, remembering his conversation with Amanda about dreams and purpose. She spoke about saving animals with the same passion he once felt about protecting his family. Before the violence consumed everything, before he became the very monster his father had trained him to be. "Set up a meeting with the realtor," Fernando said quietly. "The property and homestead, 50 acres, main house, guest cottage, existing kennels." Miguel sank into the leather chair across from the desk. "And when the other families ask questions, when they want to know why Fernando Castellano suddenly cares about dogs, they won't." Fernando's smile was cold as winter. because this stays between us. Amanda doesn't know who I really am, and it stays that way. That evening, Fernando found himself parked outside Amanda's apartment complex in Coral Gables. Not stalking, just observing. Through her window, he could see her studying at a small desk, textbooks scattered around her laptop. 3 puppies slept in a makeshift pen nearby while their mother kept watchful guard. The scene was so peaceful, so innocent, that it made Fernando's chest ache with longing for a life he'd never allowed himself to want. His phone rang. Tony, his cousin and underboss, sounded stressed. "Fernando, we've got problems. The shipment from Colombia got intercepted. Coast Guard, not police. Someone's talking." Fernando's jaw tightened. In his world, someone's talking usually meant someone was dying. "Handle it. Quietly. What about the snitch? Find them, make an example." The words came automatically. 15 years of conditioning taking over. But as he spoke, Fernando's eyes remained fixed on Amanda's window, on that gentle scene of study and puppy care that represented everything his life wasn't. After ending the call, Fernando sat in his bulletproof Mercedes, torn between 2 worlds. In one direction lay his destiny, violence, power, the endless cycle of retribution that defined his family's empire. In the other direction sat a blonde angel who believed in saving lives instead of taking them. For the first time in his adult life, Fernando Castellano found himself questioning which path he truly wanted to follow. The answer came when Amanda appeared at her window, still in pajamas, gently picking up one of the puppies who'd started crying. The tenderness in her movements, the way she cradled the small life against her heart, hit Fernando like revelation. He wanted to protect that gentleness, even if it meant protecting it from himself. Fernando started his engine and drove toward his penthouse, already planning how to buy Amanda her dream property without revealing his true identity. Tomorrow, he would figure out how to be the man she thought he was instead of the monster he'd become. "Amanda, sweetheart, you're being naive." Dr. Patricia Wells, Amanda's mentor at the veterinary clinic, handed her a cup of coffee and settled into the break-room chair with a concerned frown. "Men like Fernando don't just appear out of nowhere offering to help without expecting something in return." Amanda scratched behind Bella's ears as the mother dog rested at her feet. After 2 weeks of fostering, the German Shepherd had become her constant companion, seeming to sense when Amanda needed comfort. "But he hasn't asked for anything, Patricia. He just listens. And yesterday he mentioned knowing someone who might have property suitable for a rescue operation." "Honey, wake up." Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. "Look at his clothes, his car, the way he carries himself. That man has serious money and serious connections. In Miami, that usually means one of 2 things, drugs or weapons, neither of which you want anywhere near your future." Before Amanda could defend Fernando, her phone rang. "Amanda, it's Fernando. I hope I'm not interrupting your studies." Just hearing his voice made her heart skip. "Never, how are you?" "Better now that I'm talking to you. Listen, I know this might sound forward, but would you like to take a drive this afternoon? There's something I'd like to show you." Amanda bit her lip, looking at Patricia's disapproving expression. "What kind of something?" "A surprise, trust me." Those 2 words hung in the air like a challenge. Trust was something Amanda had learned to give carefully since her parents' death, but something in Fernando's voice, in the way he'd protected her that first night, made her want to take the risk. "Pick me up at 3? I'll be there." After she hung up, Patricia shook her head slowly. "Amanda Richardson, you're about to get your heart broken by a dangerous man." "Or maybe," Amanda said softly, "I'm about to save one." At exactly 3 o'clock, Fernando's black Mercedes pulled up outside her building. He stepped out wearing dark jeans and a white button-down shirt that emphasized his tanned skin and the edge of tattoos visible at his collar. When he smiled at her, Amanda felt that familiar flutter of attraction mixed with curiosity about the secrets he carried. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked. Opening her door. The drive south through Homestead took 40 minutes, filled with easy conversation about Amanda's studies and Fernando's carefully vague descriptions of his import business. But when they turned onto a tree-lined private road, Amanda's breath caught. 50 acres of rolling green fields stretched in every direction. A beautiful Spanish-style main house sat on a hill overlooking smaller buildings that looked like kennels. An enormous fenced area suggested room for dogs to run and play, and everywhere there was space, endless, beautiful space, perfect for animals who needed room to heal. "Fernando," Amanda whispered as they parked near the main house. "What is this place?" He turned to face her, his dark eyes intense with an emotion she couldn't name. "It's for sale. I thought, if you're serious about opening an animal rescue, this might be perfect." Amanda climbed out of the car slowly, afraid that speaking too loudly might break the dream. The property was everything she'd described wanting during their coffee date and more. As she walked toward the kennels, she could envision dogs running freely, healing from neglect and abuse, finding new families who would love them properly. "Fernando, this must cost millions. I can't possibly afford—" "What if I told you there was a way?" He moved closer, his voice dropping to that intimate tone that made her skin tingle. "What if I said I wanted to invest in your dream?" Amanda turned to study his face, searching for motives beyond the obvious attraction between them. "Why? You barely know me." Fernando was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. "My father always told me that power is about taking what you want from life. But you're the first person I've met who wants to give instead of take. Maybe I want to be part of that for once." The vulnerability in his voice caught Amanda off guard. Underneath all that confidence and control, Fernando carried pain. She could see it in the way his shoulders tensed when he mentioned his father, in the careful way he chose his words. "What kind of investment?" she asked quietly. "Partnership. I provide the property and startup capital. You provide the expertise and passion. We split ownership 50-50, but you run the day-to-day operations however you want." Amanda's heart pounded. It was too good to be true, too perfect, too much like answered prayers. But as she looked around the beautiful property, imagining all the lives they could save together, temptation overwhelmed caution. "I need to think about this," she said finally. Fernando nodded, though she caught a flicker of disappointment. "Of course, take all the time you need." As they drove back toward Miami, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that accepting Fernando's offer would change her life in ways she couldn't imagine. The question was whether she was brave enough to find out how. "Darcy, you did what?" Amanda's best friend Jessica nearly choked on her wine as they sat in their favorite South Beach restaurant 3 days later. "Amanda, tell me you did not just agree to go into business with a man you've known for 3 weeks." Amanda fidgeted with her napkin, still processing her own decision. That morning, she'd called Fernando and accepted his partnership offer. The excitement in his voice had been infectious, but now, facing Jessica's disbelief, doubt crept in again. "It's not crazy, Jess. You should see the property. It's perfect. And Fernando, there's something about him. When he talks about the rescue, his whole face changes, like he needs this as much as I do. Honey, men like Fernando Castellano don't need animal rescues. They need tax shelters and money laundering operations." Jessica leaned forward, her voice dropping. "I did some digging after you told me about him. Know what I found? Nothing. No social media, no business records under his name, no public information at all. In Miami, that kind of invisible wealth means only one thing." Amanda's stomach clenched. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your knight in shining armor might be wearing that armor to hide bloodstains." Before Amanda could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Fernando. "Can you meet me at the property tomorrow morning? I want to show you the renovation plans." As she typed back, "Yes," Amanda tried to ignore the voice in her head that sounded suspiciously like Jessica's warnings. The next morning, Amanda arrived at the homestead property to find Fernando already there, wearing jeans and a work shirt, his dark hair slightly mussed as he studied architectural plans spread across the hood of his car. The sight of him looking so normal, so approachable, eased her concerns. "Good morning, beautiful." His smile was warm as he walked over to greet her. "Ready to see what we're building together?" For the next hour, Fernando walked her through detailed renovation plans that transformed the existing buildings into a state-of-the-art animal rescue facility. Medical clinic, quarantine areas, adoption centers, training facilities, everything Amanda had dreamed of was mapped out in professional detail. "Fernando, this must have cost a fortune just to plan. When did you have time to—" "I may have been up all night with the architects," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Once I commit to something, I don't do anything halfway." The intensity in his voice sent heat through Amanda's body. When Fernando looked at her like that, with such focused attention, she felt like the center of his universe. It was intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. "There's something else," he said, his tone growing serious. "I need you to understand that this arrangement has to stay quiet for now. No publicity, no announcements until we're fully operational." "Why?" Amanda asked. though part of her already suspected the answer had to do with Jessica's warnings. Fernando was quiet for a moment, his jaw tightening slightly. Let's just say I prefer to keep my business dealings private. It protects everyone involved. The evasion bothered her, but before she could press further, Fernando's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his entire demeanor shifted, shoulders tensing, voice dropping to a dangerous tone she'd never heard before. I told you to handle this quietly, Miguel. What part of that didn't you understand? Even standing 10 feet away, Amanda could hear the urgent voice on the other end, speaking rapid Spanish. Fernando's responses were clipped, authoritative, and completely unlike the gentleman who'd been showing her renovation plans moments before. When he finally hung up, Fernando's face was a mask Amanda didn't recognize. Is everything okay? She asked carefully. Fernando seemed to remember where he was, his expression softening as he focused on her again. Business emergency, I'm sorry, but I have to handle this immediately. Of course, we can continue this another time. But as Fernando walked her to her car, Amanda couldn't shake the image of his transformation. The man on that phone call had sounded dangerous, capable of violence. Nothing like the Fernando who brought her flowers and talked about saving animals. As she drove back toward Miami, Amanda wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life, or if Fernando Castellano was worth the risk she was obviously taking. Her phone buzzed with a text. Thank you for understanding. Dinner tomorrow night, I want to make this up to you. F. Amanda stared at the message, torn between attraction and apprehension. Tomorrow night, she decided, she would ask Fernando directly about the shadows in his past. If they were going to be partners, she deserved to know what she was getting into, even if part of her was terrified of the answer. Bencher Fernando stood in his private office that evening, staring out at Miami's glittering skyline, while Miguel briefed him on the day's complications. The Kozlov family had made another aggressive move into their territory, and 3 of their dealers were now in the hospital. Retaliation was expected. Necessary. What's our response? Miguel asked. 5 years ago, Fernando wouldn't have hesitated. The Russians would have found their operation centers burned to the ground by morning, their leadership receiving very clear messages about respecting boundaries. But now, with Amanda's trusting blue eyes fresh in his memory, the thought of ordering violence made his stomach turn. Double security at all our locations, Fernando said finally, but no offensive moves, not yet. Miguel's eyebrows shot up. Boss, if we don't respond strongly, they'll see weakness. Every family in South Florida will think we've gone soft. Let them think what they want. Fernando's voice was steel. I'm not starting a war over street corners. After Miguel left, shaking his head in confusion, Fernando poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon and tried to understand what was happening to him. For 15 years, violence had been his first language. Now, the thought of Amanda discovering blood on his hands made him physically ill. His phone buzzed with a message that made everything worse. Fernando, I've been doing some research about property ownership and business partnerships. Can we talk about your background tomorrow night? I need to understand who I'm going into business with. Amanda. She was asking questions. Smart, inevitable questions that could only lead to one outcome. Amanda Richardson, learning that her knight in shining armor was actually Miami's most feared crime boss. Fernando downed his bourbon and made a decision that would either save or destroy any chance he had with the woman who'd become his obsession. Tomorrow night he would tell her the truth. The next evening, Fernando chose neutral ground, a quiet restaurant in Key Biscayne where they could talk privately. Amanda arrived wearing a simple black dress that emphasized her natural beauty, but Fernando could see the tension in her posture. She'd prepared for this conversation. "Do you look beautiful?" he said as she sat down. "Thank you." Her smile was polite but guarded. "Fernando, before we order, I need to ask you something directly." Here it comes, he thought. "Go ahead." Amanda took a deep breath, her blue eyes meeting his steadily. "What do you really do for a living? And please don't tell me import business. I've done enough research to know that legitimate importers don't require the level of privacy you seem to need." Fernando had rehearsed this moment a dozen times, but sitting across from Amanda, seeing the genuine concern in her face, all his carefully planned deflections crumbled. "You're right," he said quietly. "Import business doesn't require this level of privacy." "So what does?" Fernando signaled the waiter to give them more time, then leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Amanda, what I'm about to tell you, it's going to change how you see me. Probably how you feel about me. Her hands were trembling slightly, but she didn't look away. Tell me anyway. My family, we're not exactly legitimate business people. We control territory in Miami. Shipping, construction, some restaurants and clubs. We settle disputes that can't go through normal legal channels. We provide protection for people who need it. He paused, searching for words that might soften the blow. I'm what people might call a crime boss, Amanda. The silence stretched between them like an ocean. Amanda's face went through a series of emotions, shock, fear, understanding, and something else Fernando couldn't identify. How much crime? She asked finally. The question caught him off guard. He'd expected her to leave immediately. What do you mean? Do you hurt innocent people? Do you sell drugs to children? Do you force people into prostitution or slavery? Her voice was steady, clinical almost. No, none of those things. We have rules about civilians, about what business we will and won't touch. Fernando studied her face, trying to understand her reaction. But I won't lie to you, Amanda. My world involves violence. I've done things that would horrify you. Amanda was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing patterns on the white tablecloth. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft he had to strain to hear. My father wasn't the insurance salesman everyone thought he was. What? He worked for the DEA, undercover operations mostly. I grew up understanding that good people sometimes have to work in dark places to protect others. She looked up at Fernando, her blue eyes clear and determined. The question isn't whether you've done bad things, Fernando. The question is whether you're trying to become a better man. Fernando felt something break open in his chest. Yes, he whispered. God, yes. Amanda, meeting you. It's made me want to be someone worthy of the way you look at me. She reached across the table and took his hand, her fingers soft against his scarred knuckles. Then we'll figure this out together. For the first time in 15 years, Fernando Castellano felt like he might actually deserve redemption. But neither of them noticed the man at the corner table taking photos with a telephoto lens or the black sedan that followed Amanda home that night. Professor, boss, we've got a problem. Tony's voice was tight with urgency as he burst into Fernando's office 3 days later, not bothering with his usual knock. Fernando looked up from the animal rescue blueprints he'd been reviewing, immediately alert. What kind of problem? The kind that involves your blonde girlfriend and a very pissed-off Russian with revenge on his mind. Ice flooded Fernando's veins. Explain, now. Tony dropped a folder of photographs on the desk, pictures of Fernando and Amanda at dinner, walking through the rescue property, holding hands outside her apartment. The angles and quality suggested professional surveillance. Viktor Kozlov has been watching you for 2 weeks. Word on the street is he's planning something big, something that targets what's important to you instead of our business operations. Fernando's hands clenched into fists as he studied the photos. Amanda's face was clearly visible in every shot, her identity now known to one of the most dangerous men in Miami. Where is she now? University of Miami campus, veterinary lab session until 6 p.m. Tony's expression was grim. Fernando, she needs protection, real protection, and she needs to know why. No. The word was sharp as a blade. She stays out of this. She's already in it. Tony slammed his hand on the desk. The moment Kozlov decided to use her against you, she became a target. You can't protect what you won't acknowledge. Fernando stood and walked to his office window, staring out at the city he'd controlled for 5 years. Everything he'd built, every deal he'd made, every enemy he'd defeated. It all meant nothing if he couldn't keep Amanda safe. But involving her in his world would destroy the innocent light he'd fallen in love with. The woman who believed in saving lives instead of taking them would have to live in constant fear, surrounded by bodyguards always looking over her shoulder. There's another option, Tony said quietly. I'm listening. End it. Walk away from her completely. If she's not connected to you, she's not a target. The suggestion hit Fernando like a physical blow. Walk away from Amanda. Give up the only pure thing he'd ever found. Return to the empty, violent existence he'd lived before she smiled at him in that alley. I can't, he whispered. Then you better figure out how to tell her the truth about what dating Fernando Castellano really means. That evening, Fernando sat in his car outside Amanda's apartment building, watching her windows for signs of movement. His security team was positioned at strategic points around the block, but it felt like inadequate protection against the storm brewing around them. When Amanda appeared at her window, playing with one of the puppies, Fernando's heart clenched. She looked so peaceful, so innocent of the danger circling her life because of his feelings for her. His phone rang. Amanda's number. "Hi, beautiful," he answered, trying to keep his voice normal. "Fernando, I can see your car from my window. Are you planning to come up, or are you going to sit down there looking mysterious all evening?" Despite everything, Fernando smiled. "You caught me. I was working up the courage to ask if you wanted to have dinner. With my mysterious crime boss boyfriend? Always." Her tone was teasing, but Fernando heard the acceptance underneath. She'd made peace with who he was, at least partially. "Come up, I'll cook." 20 minutes later, Fernando sat in Amanda's tiny kitchen, watching her prepare pasta while the puppies played around their feet. The domesticity was everything he'd never known he wanted, and everything he was about to lose. "Amanda," he said carefully, "how would you feel about taking a vacation? Somewhere far from Miami?" She turned from the stove, studying his face with those perceptive blue eyes. "Running from something or toward something? Away from danger. Your danger or mine?" Fernando stood and moved closer, needing to touch her, to reassure himself she was still there and still safe. "Mine. But it's becoming yours too, and that's not acceptable." Amanda set down her wooden spoon and turned to face him fully. "Fernando, look at me, really look at me." He met her gaze, seeing strength and determination alongside the gentleness he adored. "I'm not some fragile flower who needs to be protected from reality. If being with you means accepting certain risks, then I accept them. What I won't accept is being pushed away because you think you know what's best for me." "Amanda, you don't understand. These people don't have limits. They don't care about innocent civilians or collateral damage. Then we make sure I'm not innocent anymore." Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Teach me how to protect myself. Introduce me to your world properly. Let me choose whether I want to fight beside you or walk away." Fernando stared at her, seeing not just the veterinary student he'd fallen for, but a woman with the courage to walk into fire for love. The realization was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. "You're serious," he said. "Dead serious." Amanda stepped closer, her hands finding his face. "I love you, Fernando Castellano. All of you. The good parts and the dangerous parts. I'm not going anywhere." As Fernando kissed her, pouring all his love and fear and desperate hope into the contact, he made another decision that would change both their lives. Tomorrow, he would introduce Amanda to his family, and then he would teach Victor Kozlov why threatening the people Fernando loved was the last mistake anyone ever made. "Your son, absolutely not." Miguel's voice echoed through Fernando's office the next morning. "You cannot bring a civilian to family dinner. Have you lost your mind?" Fernando adjusted his cufflinks, already dressed for the evening's formal introduction. "Amanda is not a civilian anymore, Miguel. She's chosen to be part of this life, which makes her part of this family." "The Kozlovs have 3 more men in town as of yesterday," Tony added from his position by the window. "Bringing her to the compound tonight is like painting a target on her back in neon." "The target's already there." Fernando's voice was cold with controlled fury. "At least this way everyone knows she's under family protection." What Fernando didn't tell his men was that he'd spent the previous night lying awake, holding Amanda while she slept, memorizing the feel of her breathing against his chest. If Victor Kozlov wanted war, he would get it. But Fernando would be damned if he lost the woman he loved, because he was too much of a coward to claim her publicly. That evening, Fernando picked up Amanda at 7 sharp. She wore a midnight blue dress that emphasized her elegance without being overly formal, and had styled her blonde hair in a sophisticated updo that made her look like old Hollywood royalty. "You look incredible," he said, kissing her hand as she settled into the Mercedes. "I feel nervous," she admitted. "Meeting your family feels significant." "It is significant." Fernando reached over and squeezed her fingers. "Amanda, I need you to understand something. Tonight isn't just dinner. It's me telling every person in my world that you matter to me, that you're under my protection. In my family's world, that's like a marriage announcement." Amanda was quiet for a moment, processing the weight of what he'd said. "And you're ready for that level of commitment? With you? I've never been more ready for anything in my life." The Castellano family compound sat on 10 acres in Coral Gables, surrounded by high walls and discreet security measures. As Fernando's car passed through the wrought iron gates, Amanda could see gardens, a main house that looked like a Mediterranean palace, and smaller buildings that probably housed security teams. "Fernando," she said softly, "this is intimidating. I know. But remember, They're going to love you because I love you. That's how family works. The evening went better than Fernando had dared hope. His mother, Elena Castellano, immediately adopted Amanda as the daughter she'd never had, sharing stories about Fernando's childhood while he pretended to be embarrassed. His father, Roberto, gruff and intimidating to outsiders, treated Amanda with old-world courtesy that bordered on reverence. "Mijo," Roberto said to Fernando as they stepped onto the terrace after dinner, "this one is special. Don't screw it up." "I don't plan to, Papa." "Good, because war is coming, and you'll need something worth fighting for." Back inside, Amanda was deep in conversation with Fernando's sister, Maria, about the animal rescue plans when Fernando's phone buzzed with an emergency text from Miguel. "Kozlov just hit the downtown warehouse. 3 men in the hospital. This is war." Fernando excused himself and stepped into his father's study to return the call. "How bad?" "Bad. They used explosives, Fernando. This wasn't just a message. They were trying to kill as many of our people as possible." Through the study's open door, Fernando could see Amanda laughing at something his mother had said, her face bright with joy. The contrast between her innocence and the violence erupting around them made his chest ache. "Double security on Amanda immediately," he ordered. "And I want to know exactly where Victor Kozlov is sleeping tonight." "Boss, are you sure about escalating this? If we hit back hard..." "They brought explosives into a building with our people inside, Miguel." This stopped being about territory the moment they decided murder was acceptable. After hanging up, Fernando rejoined the family gathering, but Amanda immediately noticed his tension. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. "Business complications. We should probably head home soon." But as they said their goodbyes, Fernando's mother pulled Amanda aside. "Mija, I know my son's world is complicated. If you ever need anything, protection, advice, just someone to talk to, you call me directly. Family protects family, always." Driving back to Amanda's apartment, Fernando made another decision that would forever change the trajectory of their relationship. "Amanda, pack a bag. You're staying with me until this situation resolves." "What situation?" Fernando met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "The one where people who want to hurt me might try to use you to do it." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and determined. "Okay, but Fernando, if we're really doing this, if I'm really joining your world, then I want to know everything, no more protecting me from the truth." "Everything?" "Everything." Fernando nodded, knowing that tomorrow would bring conversations that would either bind them closer together or drive Amanda away forever. But tonight, for just a few more hours, he could pretend they were just a normal couple in love, instead of a crime boss, and the woman who'd chosen to stand beside him in war. Domsa. Fernando's penthouse felt like a fortress the next morning. Floor-to-ceiling windows that had once offered stunning Miami views were now covered with bulletproof film. Security monitors showed feeds from 12 different cameras, and Amanda woke up to find 2 of Fernando's most trusted men stationed outside the bedroom door. "This is my new normal?" she asked, wrapping his silk robe around herself as she found Fernando in his office, already dressed and speaking rapid Spanish into his phone. He ended the call immediately and pulled her close. "Just until we resolve the current situation." "The situation has a name." "Doesn't it?" Fernando studied her face, seeing determination alongside the fear she was trying to hide. She'd asked for complete honesty, and she deserved it, even if the truth might terrify her. "Victor Kozlov, Russian crime family. They want our territory, and they've decided you're the best way to hurt me." Amanda absorbed this information with surprising calm. "How do we stop him?" The question caught Fernando off guard. Not how do you stop him or what are you going to do, but how do we? As if she truly saw herself as his partner in this fight. "We end this permanently," Fernando said quietly. "But Amanda, what that means will involve violence." "I understand." Her blue eyes were steady, unflinching. "Fernando, I'm not asking you to become someone different. I'm asking you to let me become someone strong enough to stand beside who you already are." That afternoon, against every instinct screaming at him to keep her hidden and safe, Fernando took Amanda to meet his weapons instructor. Maria Santos ran a private security firm that trained bodyguards for high-profile clients, but she also had a special arrangement with the Castellano family. "So you're the woman who's got Fernando Castellano acting like a lovesick teenager," Maria said, shaking Amanda's hand with a grip that could crush bones. "You know how to handle a gun, sweetheart." "I've been hunting since I was 12, Amanda replied calmly, "but I assume this is different from shooting deer." Very different. Maria led them to her private indoor range. When you're protecting your life, or Fernando's life, you don't get second chances. For the next 3 hours, Amanda learned about handguns, personal protection tactics, and situational awareness from one of the best instructors in Florida. She was a natural student, calm under pressure, quick to adapt, surprisingly accurate with the .380 pistol Maria recommended for concealed carry. "She's got good instincts," Maria told Fernando as Amanda practiced reloading drills. Most civilians panic when they realize violence is real. This one gets focused. Fernando watched Amanda handle the weapon with steady hands and steely concentration, feeling pride mixed with heartbreak. This wasn't the life he'd wanted for her, but seeing her adapt to his world with such grace made him love her even more. That evening, as they returned to his penthouse, Fernando's phone exploded with urgent calls. Victor Kozlov had made another move, this time targeting one of Fernando's legitimate businesses, a restaurant his family had owned for 20 years. "No casualties," Miguel reported, "but the message is clear. He's escalating and he doesn't care about collateral damage." "Time to send our own message," Fernando said grimly. "Boss, if we hit one of their operations—" "No operations. Victor himself. Tonight." After ending the call, Fernando found Amanda in their bedroom, calmly packing extra ammunition into her new purse, alongside lipstick and car keys. "Where are we going?" she asked. "We are not going anywhere. I am handling business and you are staying here where it's safe." Amanda stood and faced him, hands on her hips. "Fernando Castellano, we had an agreement. No more protecting me from reality." "This isn't reality, Amanda, this is war." "Then teach me how to fight it." The argument that followed was passionate, fierce and ultimately resolved when Amanda played her trump card. "If you leave me here while you go into danger, I'll worry myself sick. If you take me with you, at least I'll know you're safe." 2 hours later, Fernando sat in his bulletproof Mercedes outside a warehouse in downtown Miami, Amanda beside him wearing Kevlar under a designer jacket and a .380 pistol in her purse. His entire security team was positioned around the building, and Victor Kozlov was about to learn what happened when someone threatened Fernando's family. "Last chance to change your mind," Fernando said quietly. Amanda reached over and took his hand. "I chose you, Fernando, all of you. I'm not backing down now." As they walked toward the warehouse where Victor Kozlov waited for what he thought was a peace negotiation, Fernando realized he was no longer just fighting for territory or respect or family honor. He was fighting for the future he wanted to build with the remarkable woman who'd chosen to love a monster and help him become a man. Tonight would determine if they survived long enough to see that future together. The warehouse smelled of rust and motor oil, its cavernous space dimly lit by hanging industrial lights that cast long shadows between stacks of shipping containers. Fernando and Amanda entered through the main door, flanked by Miguel and Tony, while the rest of Fernando's team remained hidden in strategic positions around the building. Victor Kozlov waited in the center of the space with 6 of his men, his pale eyes immediately finding Amanda and lingering with predatory interest. "Fernando Castellano," Victor's accented English carried across the empty space. "Finally we meet face to face, and you brought entertainment." "I brought my future wife." Fernando's voice was ice-cold steel. "The woman you've been stupid enough to threaten." Amanda felt Fernando's tension like electricity in the air, but her own nerves had settled into crystal clarity. The hours of weapons training had prepared her for this moment, and she stood beside Fernando with the quiet confidence of someone ready for whatever came next. "Ah yes, the little veterinarian." Victor's smile was reptilian. "Tell me, sweetheart, does your Fernando ever tell you bedtime stories about the people he's killed, the families he's destroyed?" "He tells me about the animals we're going to save together," Amanda replied calmly. "And the life we're building away from men like you." Victor laughed, but there was surprise in his pale eyes. "Brave little rabbit. I can see why Fernando is so attached." "Let's get to business," Fernando interrupted, his hand resting casually near his concealed weapon. "You wanted to negotiate terms for your withdrawal from Miami. Here are mine. You and your people leave Florida completely. Tonight. In return, I don't kill you where you stand." "Generous offer," Victor mused, "but I think I prefer my original plan." The Russian snapped his fingers, and suddenly Amanda found herself grabbed from behind by a man who'd somehow approached without detection. Cold steel pressed against her throat as the knife wielder dragged her several feet away from Fernando. "Much better," Victor said pleasantly. "Now we can discuss this properly." What happened next unfolded in seconds but felt like hours to Amanda. Fernando's expression shifted from protective to absolutely murderous, his hand moving toward his gun. But before he could draw, Amanda remembered Maria's training about being grabbed from behind. She drove her elbow backward into her attacker's solar plexus, simultaneously stepping on his instep and grabbing his knife hand. As he doubled over, she spun away and drew her own 380 in one smooth motion, pointing it directly at Victor's chest. "Back off," she said, her voice deadly calm. "All of you." The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of safeties clicking off as both sides drew weapons. Amanda stood in no man's land, holding Victor Kozlov at gunpoint, while 12 armed men sized up their odds. "Well, well," Victor said, seemingly delighted rather than threatened. "Fernando, your little rabbit has teeth." "More than teeth," Amanda replied, her aim steady. "I've got training, motivation, and a man I love very much standing behind me. How much do you want to bet I won't pull this trigger?" For a heartbeat, everything balanced on the edge of a blade. Then Victor began to laugh, genuine amusement that echoed through the warehouse. "You know what, Fernando? I like her. She's got style." He raised his hands slowly, signaling his men to lower their weapons. "Perhaps we can reach a different arrangement." "The arrangement is you leave Miami," Fernando said, moving to Amanda's side but not interfering with her aim. "Tonight. Or perhaps," Victor continued as if Fernando hadn't spoken, "the arrangement is that I keep my territory, you keep yours, and we all live to see tomorrow. Because killing you here would mean killing this fascinating woman as well. And that would be wasteful." Amanda could feel Fernando's fury radiating like heat, could sense how badly he wanted to end Victor permanently. But she also understood the mathematics of their situation. They were outnumbered, and despite her training, she was still the most vulnerable person in the room. 30 days, she said suddenly. "Victor gets 30 days to transition his operations out of Miami peacefully. In return, you and your people leave us alone during that time." "Amanda," Fernando's voice carried warning. 30 days, she repeated, still holding Victor at gunpoint. "Or we all die here tonight and nobody gets what they want." Victor considered the proposition, his pale eyes calculating odds and angles. Finally, he nodded once. 30 days. But understand this, little rabbit. If Fernando causes me any problems during that time, you'll discover just how creative Russian revenge can be. And if you harm one hair on her head," Fernando said softly, "you'll discover why Miami has belonged to my family for 20 years. As they left the warehouse, Amanda's hands finally began to shake. She'd just held a dangerous man at gunpoint, negotiated a temporary truce, and bought them 30 days to find a permanent solution. That, Fernando said as they reached the car, was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the craziest. "Maybe both," Amanda admitted, leaning against him for support. "But we're alive and we have time to figure this out properly." Fernando kissed the top of her head, his arms tight around her. "I love you, Amanda Richardson. Completely, desperately, forever." "Good," she whispered against his chest, "because we have 30 days to plan a wedding and eliminate a Russian crime boss. In that order?" Amanda looked up at him, her blue eyes bright with love and determination. "Definitely in that order." "None. You want to do what?" Miguel stared at Fernando across the conference table in the family compound's secure meeting room. Around them, maps of Miami were covered with red pins marking Kozlov operations, while surveillance photos lined the walls. "I want to marry Amanda next weekend," Fernando repeated calmly, "before we move against Victor." "Fernando, this is insane," Tony protested. "We're in the middle of a war and you want to plan a wedding?" "I want to make Amanda legally family before anything else happens." Fernando's voice carried absolute finality. "If something goes wrong, if Victor breaks the truce, I want her protected by every law and tradition that governs family business." Roberto Castellano, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "The boy is right. In our world, wives have protections that girlfriends don't. If Victor comes after her, he'll be violating codes that even Russians understand." Meanwhile, across town in a bridal shop in Coral Gables, Amanda stood before a three-way mirror, wearing a stunning white dress that she'd never imagined choosing under these circumstances. "Sweetheart," Elena Castellano said, adjusting the dress's cathedral train, "most brides have months to plan. You're giving us 6 days." "Most brides aren't marrying into crime families during territorial wars," Amanda replied, surprised by how normal the words sounded coming from her mouth. 3 weeks ago, Her biggest concern was paying veterinary school tuition. Now she was planning a wedding that would make her the wife of Miami's most powerful crime boss. "Are you having second thoughts?" Elena asked gently. Amanda studied her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked confident, determined, ready for whatever came next. But underneath the elegant wedding dress, she wore the shoulder holster that Maria Santos had custom-fitted for her. "No second thoughts," she said firmly. "I love your son, all of him, the parts that save animals and the parts that protect family. This is the life I'm choosing." That evening, Fernando found Amanda on his penthouse balcony, staring out at Miami's skyline while 3 puppies played at her feet. Bella, the mother German shepherd, lay protectively nearby. "Regrets?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "About marrying you?" "Never." Amanda leaned back against his chest. "About the timing? Maybe a little. I always imagined my wedding would be about celebrating love, not preparing for war." "What if I told you this could be both?" Amanda turned in his arms. "What do you mean?" "I mean I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another human being. I mean that meeting you changed everything I thought I knew about what life could be. War or no war, Russians or no Russians, I want to marry you because you make me want to be the best man I can be." The sincerity in Fernando's voice made Amanda's heart race. This was her Fernando, not the crime boss, not the dangerous man who commanded fear and respect, but the man who'd saved a dog family in an alley and fallen in love with a woman who believed in second chances. "Then let's get married," she said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. "And after we're husband and wife, we'll deal with Viktor Kozlov together." "Together?" "Fernando, I meant what I said in that warehouse. I chose this life, which means I chose all of it. The beautiful parts and the dangerous parts. You don't get to protect me from the hard decisions anymore." That night, as they lay in bed listening to Miami's distant sounds, Fernando told Amanda about his childhood, about a father who taught him that power was everything, that showing weakness meant death, that love was a luxury men in their position couldn't afford. "For 15 years I believed him," Fernando said quietly. "I built walls around everything that could be used against me. I made myself into exactly the kind of man my father wanted. Ruthless, untouchable, alone. What changed? A beautiful woman risking her safety to help a mother dog protect her babies." Fernando's voice was soft with wonder. "You showed me that strength isn't about building walls, Amanda. It's about finding something worth tearing them down for." Amanda kissed his chest, right over the tattoo that covered an old bullet scar. "Your father was wrong about love being weakness, Fernando. In our world, love is going to be our greatest weapon." "How do you figure?" "Because Viktor Kozlov understands greed, fear, and revenge. He doesn't understand what 2 people will do when they're fighting for a future together, instead of just fighting to survive." 3 days before their wedding, Fernando's security team reported disturbing news. Viktor had brought in additional men from New York and Atlanta. The Russians weren't planning to honor their 30-day agreement. "He's going to move against us," Miguel reported grimly. "Probably during the wedding ceremony." "Let him come," Fernando said quietly. "We'll be ready." But as he hung up the phone, Fernando wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. Marrying Amanda would make her a legitimate target in ways she'd never been before. It would also make her the most important person in his world, and therefore the most valuable weapon anyone could use against him. Was he protecting the woman he loved, or painting an even bigger target on her back? In 48 hours, he would have his answer. The Church of the Epiphany in South Beach had never hosted a wedding quite like Fernando and Amanda's. While 60 guests filled the beautiful sanctuary, family members, close friends and select business associates, an additional 30 security personnel maintained watchful positions throughout the building and surrounding blocks. Amanda walked down the aisle on Roberto Castellano's arm, her father having died years earlier. She wore Eleanor's family wedding dress, altered to fit her perfectly, carrying white orchids that matched Fernando's boutonniere. Through her veil, she could see Fernando waiting at the altar in a black tuxedo that emphasized his dark good looks, his eyes never leaving her face. "You sure about this, Mija?" Roberto whispered as they reached the front of the church. "More sure than I've ever been about anything," Amanda whispered back. Father Martinez, who had baptized Fernando 35 years earlier, began the ceremony with prayers in both English and Spanish. As Amanda and Fernando exchanged vows they'd written themselves, the words carried extra weight given the circumstances surrounding their union. "Amanda," Fernando said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his dark eyes. "You saw past everything I thought defined me and found someone worth loving underneath. You taught me that real strength comes from protecting what matters, not from building walls around your heart. I promise to love you, protect you, and stand beside you no matter what storms we face together." "Fernando," Amanda replied, her voice clear and strong, "you showed me that love isn't about finding safety. It's about finding someone worth being brave for. I promise to love all of you, the gentle man who saves animals and the fierce man who protects family. I choose you, choose us, choose this life we're building together." As Father Martinez pronounced them husband and wife, Fernando's kiss was tender, reverent, full of promises about the future they would create together. The reception was held at the Castellano family compound, where Elena had transformed the gardens into something magical despite the short planning time. String lights created a canopy of stars above the dance floor, while security teams maintained discreet positions around the perimeter. "So far, so good," Miguel murmured to Fernando as they watched Amanda dancing with Roberto during the traditional father-daughter dance. "The night's young," Fernando replied, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd for potential threats. At 10:30, as Amanda threw her bouquet and prepared to cut the cake, Fernando's phone buzzed with the message he'd been dreading. 3 vehicles approaching the north gate. Armed men. This is not a drill." Fernando caught Miguel's eye across the dance floor and nodded once. The plan they'd prepared went into effect immediately. Guests were quietly evacuated to the main house's secure areas, while family soldiers took defensive positions. "What's happening?" Amanda asked, as Fernando appeared at her side. "Victor's here. Earlier than expected, but not unexpected." Fernando's voice was calm, but Amanda could see the lethal focus in his eyes. Time to find out if Russian honor means anything. Through the garden's entrance came Victor Kozlov with 8 of his men, all wearing dark suits that couldn't quite conceal their weapons. The wedding guests had vanished, leaving only Fernando's family and security team in defensive positions around the garden. "Congratulations, Fernando," Victor called across the dance floor. "Beautiful ceremony, though I'm disappointed you didn't invite me to witness your vulnerability." "You weren't invited because this is family business," Fernando replied, his arm around Amanda's waist. "Something you've never understood." "Oh, but I understand perfectly." Victor's pale eyes fixed on Amanda with predatory interest. "I understand that you've just given me the perfect weapon to destroy everything you've built." Amanda stepped forward slightly, her hand resting casually near the concealed pistol beneath her wedding dress. "You understand wrong, Victor. You're not looking at Fernando's weakness. You're looking at his greatest strength." Pretty words from a dead woman. "Careful." Fernando's voice dropped to the dangerous tone that made enemies reconsider their life choices. "You're talking about my wife." What happened next moved with the swift brutality of inevitable violence. Victor's men reached for their weapons, but they were outgunned and outpositioned. Fernando's security team had every angle covered, every escape route blocked, but it was Amanda who ended the standoff. Drawing her pistol with the smooth speed Maria Santos had drilled into her, she put 2 rounds center mass into Victor Kozlov before anyone else could fire a shot. The Russian crime boss dropped to the garden's marble floor, his pale eyes wide with surprise. "Anyone else want to threaten my husband?" Amanda asked calmly, her smoking pistol still trained on Victor's men. The remaining Russians looked at their dead leader, at the 30 weapons pointed in their direction, and made the intelligent choice. They dropped their guns and raised their hands. "Well," Fernando said, pulling Amanda close and kissing her temple, "that's one way to end our wedding reception." "I told you love would be our greatest weapon," Amanda replied, holstering her pistol with steady hands. Victor never understood that some things are worth killing for. 6 months later, Amanda stood in the main building of the Fernando and Amanda Castellano Animal Rescue, watching a family from Homestead meet the German Shepherd puppy they were about to adopt. Bella watched from nearby, proud of how well her babies were doing in their new lives. "Any regrets?" Fernando asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "About shooting Victor? No." Amanda leaned back against her husband's chest. "About marrying into your world? Never. About wearing a bulletproof vest under my wedding dress? That was just practical planning." Fernando laughed, the sound rich and warm in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the rescue's windows. "What about regrets about me?" Amanda turned in his arms, studying the face she'd fallen in love with. The dangerous edge was still there, probably always would be, but now it was balanced by gentleness, purpose, and the deep contentment of a man who'd found something worth changing for. "Fernando Castellano," she said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him, "you're the best decision I ever made, even if you did come with Russian crime bosses and wedding shootouts. Just think of it as never having a boring anniversary story to tell our children." "Children?" Amanda's eyes lit up with sudden interest. "Would you like some? Little Fernandos and Amandas running around the rescue, learning to love animals and protect family?" Amanda looked around their beautiful facility, imagining it filled with the sounds of children's laughter mixing with happy dog barks. "I think that sounds perfect," as they kissed in the sunlight. Surrounded by the animals they'd saved and the life they'd built together, Fernando realized he'd found something he'd never believed existed. A love worth every risk, every sacrifice, every choice that had led him to this moment. Amanda Richardson Castellano had taught him that the strongest men weren't those who built walls around their hearts, but those who found someone worth tearing them down for. And they lived happily, dangerously, and completely in love ever after.